if I were to ask you what the correct time is, a few things would probably happen. You would look at your smartphone, your wrist, maybe the screen of your computer if that's what you're using now, and then a stray thought may go through your head. What did he mean by correct time? I mean, how could it be wrong? The same series of events would happen if I asked what the correct temperature was. These are the ways we operate now to receive time, temperature, and most of our news, really. Nowhere in this scenario did I envision any of you picking up a landline and calling a phone number to find out the answer to either of my questions. But at one point not long ago, this was a very real possibility. Luke and Chuck Williams worked in their family sign company for years and invented a sign that would tell the time and temperature. Their first sign was on a branch of Seattle First National Bank at Howard and Riverside in 1953 in Spokane, Washington. It proved to be so popular that other banks could only answer by ordering their own signs. By 1977, the Williams Brothers Company, American Sign and Indicator, claimed to have more than 7,000 signs in operation across the United States. Banks would often have these outdoor timepieces and thermometers to get your attention focused on their bank name. There was a bit of prestige around having one of these clocks. Prior to this, town halls, a courthouse, or maybe a church would have a clock for the townsfolk to tell time. These were institutions that were pillars of society for a long time. Banks could now also claim some of this notoriety by having not only a clock, but also the temperature. Many times these clocks were advertised as a predetermined meeting place to meet up with your friends for a get-together, a sort of rallying point. Banks were getting their money's worth out of these clocks on advertising alone. It may sound strange now, but at one point, keeping accurate time at home could be an annoyance. Power outages were more common, rendering electric clocks inaccurate at times. Many clocks still had to be wound, which could be neglected. There was no TV channel to turn to, no smartphone, no digital clock with battery backup. Your best bet was having one timepiece that would keep decent time and that you set the time on every day or so against a dependable source of the correct time, like your local bank clock. Running downtown to a bank clock each time you wanted to know what the correct time was seemed a little inconvenient. That's where the phone company came into the picture. A different solution for the average local resident was to call a phone number that connected them to a machine at the local phone switch that gave them the time, temperature, and an advertisement for whoever was paying for the lease on the machine. The system worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and was very accurate. It could be reached from any phone, and the voice on the other end was often comforting to those who frequently called. For many young people, this was one of the first numbers they memorized and was often written on the list of numbers that was written where your kitchen wall phone was hanging. The common machines used for this service for many decades were the Autochron brand machines that held magnetic tape drums. Each different drum held different recordings, one for hour, one for minute, temperature, etc. When a call came in, it mechanically played the recording. Some systems would cut the message to the bare bones if there were too many callers calling in at one time, just trying to serve as many people as possible.
We're sorry, all circuits are busy now. Will you please try your call again later?
These were often sponsored by the same companies that had a clock outside their establishment, such as banks and jewelry stores, and the ads that played would often tell you the benefits of opening a checking account, reminding you that Mother's Day was coming up and your mom loved jewelry. The voice talent for these machines were those of Jane Barbie, Joanne Daniels, John Doyle, and Pat Fleet. If you used a time and temperature line back in the day, chances are high that you heard one of these voices, though there were others. Even if your power was out, as long as you had a standard telephone, you could always reach the time and temperature and hear the recording. It is hard to understand now, but calling a time and temperature number was like the equivalent of opening a social media app out of habit. It's just something we did out of habit without even thinking about it back then. The recording was something familiar. It was safe and reliable. There are stories around the internet of people in lonely situations calling the line to stay grounded in reality. One story of a woman recovering in the hospital. One of a man that had no one to call when he first got out of prison. Another story I saw was a man that worked in desolate Death Valley who would call just to hear a human voice. For every one of those stories, there are hundreds of others about someone who just woke up with the lights off in a silent house after a violent storm and needed to be reassured that the world was still operating as usual. People in their 70s have reported that they call the line in the middle of the night still to this day when they can't sleep. I've spoken this whole time about the numbers in past tense, but as hard as it may be to believe, there are still many of these lines in operation today. The amount of use these numbers still get is unreal. One report I read put the number of calls to a time and temp line in Tarrant County, Texas, at 10 to 20,000 a day. There are still time and temp lines in service in every state, and many times there are multiple. The estimated amount of calls to the lines nationwide are still 1 million calls a year. There are a lot of ways that you interact with technology every day that would have been impossible for your grandparents to attempt at your age. This is one thing that you can still perform the same way they did.
We're sorry. Due to telephone company facility trouble, your call cannot be completed at this time. Will you try your call again later?
In a world where so much has changed, where technology has come so far and the whole planet has gotten smaller, we still sometimes have a need for familiarity. Or maybe we just want to feel validated by knowing our technology still works. Or maybe we just want to know the temperature. What about you? What story do you have from your childhood, from your family, from recent times, about a time and temperature line in your own life? Silly as that may sound, I'm seeing stories all over the internet about folks who have memories of using them or current stories of still using them. Let me know in comments, and thank you for watching my video. If you're liking my videos, you can watch a couple more, subscribe. Most of all, just thank you for stopping by. Have a good day.